What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Creator's Kit. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Owen. This is my dear friend, Mr. Mark Schofield. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
I'm very excited to be here, my friend. It's been far too long. Last time we chatted, I think, was right before the F1 season started on that sort of round table we had.
The round table, yeah.
I'm trying to think back to some of the takes I had during that show. I think some of them have held up. Some of them I think have already crashed and burned.
I honestly, I said after we recorded that, I was like, I think I should go back and re-listen to the things that we all talked about, and kind of the same thing, go check what my takes are and everything. And now I'm like, I don't even want to know. I want to know how wrong I got it.
I'm happy with the Alpine take because they've been good so far. But I know I also talked pretty positively about Aston, and that doesn't look too good right now.
No,
that's kind of a disaster at this moment. But I mean, still, though, that was a fun way to spend a Saturday morning.
That was a blast. I was so beyond nervous for that because Casey and I have never ran a panel like that.
Right.
And I was just we ended it, and I texted Casey right away, and I was like, please tell me I wasn't a nervous wreck during that, because I was so
I was nervous too. I mean, because you have a group of people like that who are all brilliant and smart.
Yeah.
And you're always like, am I going to be, it's like that scene from Rounders, right? If you sit down at a table and you don't know, who the mark is, it's you. I kind of felt like, am I going to be the one that is it going to be me? Am I going to be the one dragging this ship down? So, no. But no, I watched it actually a couple of times. It was fantastic, and the people were all great. You and Casey has always crushed it. It was awesome.
It was such a blast. But thank you for joining me for this. As you know, we texted a little bit before we jumped in here, but this is a creator's kit. This is where I'm sitting down with content creators, journalists, photographers, anybody and everybody that I can find in the Formula One world to talk about their workflows and how they manage to do what they do, and the ideas and processes that they have to do this. I said this in my last episode with Sarah Levison, but this show was born out of a selfish desire to improve my workflows and steal people's ideas to make my flows better. And so I got to say, when I first texted you about this, I loved your response, because I asked you to be on, and you were like, I don't know how fun this is going to be. I am all pen and paper. I was like,
I'm 90% pen and paper. I've watched a couple. I haven't seen all of the ones that you've done so far, but everybody's talking about different apps, different, sort of electronic tools. And I'm like,
yeah.
And I've got props, though. I would say this to try to spice things up. I got props. This is where we start. This is my little brown,
I love it,
Moleskine notebook. And fun little tidbit about this, because we'll dive into this in a minute. If you remember Miami last year, so 25,
yes.
Casey, I was at the airport, and Casey put it out, I think, on Threads, and then he maybe texted it to us as well. The Aston Martin TikTok, where I'm walking, you can see me walk out of their hospitality space as Fernando walks in, and I have to get get out of the way, and it's like, oh, hello, princess, where are you? As he zooms in face wise, you'll see me holding this. Okay,
that's good.
And you can even see, for those who are watching, there's my little F1 Media Center sticker from Austin last year. I carry this everywhere because it doesn't matter if I'm in a media scrum, in a hospitality interview, in a one-on-one interview, even interviews that I do. I interviewed Arvid Lindblad last week before Miami over Zoom. Questions were all here. Why?
Yeah.
I do stuff online. I'll use Google Docs all the time. Google Docs, Google Sheets. I rely on those a ton. A lot of the and we'll talk more about the stuff that I do, but a lot of the starting grid, provisional grids, race results, that stuff's all in a Google Sheet that I'll fill in as qualifying goes on, as a race happens, and then upload it into WordPress in a table, in a block of a table, which is how it works in WordPress, which is our publishing software. But everything happens in here first.
I like
because of a couple of reasons. I do F1 stuff, as you know, but it's not the only thing I do. I started out on the NFL side. I started out, covering the NFL, college football, NFL draft. And so I always found I would try to take notes on a Google Sheet, Google Doc, whatever. Didn't commit it to memory. And a lot of the stuff that I would do in that NFL space is studying quarterbacks, particularly for the NFL draft, which you got through. So I would watch games. I would take notes on every single play, formation, movement, motion, footwork, pre-snap reads, what the defensive coverage is, all that stuff. And I found that if I was doing that in a Google Doc or electronically some way, I couldn't commit it to memory. So then when I would go on like a radio show, a TV show, be asked like, hey, what do you like about Josh Allen? I would freeze up.
You couldn't.
So I started doing it pen and paper. So here's another little prop. This is my Inside the Pylon 2018 NFL Draft quarterbacks for the Senior Bowl. Okay. I still have. You can't quite see it, but I've got 3-ring binder after 3-ring binder of all the quarterbacks I have ever studied for the NFL Draft. And so this is the one that I took all the quarterbacks from 2018, the ones that were going to the Senior Bowl, the like 8 or so, took all their notes and put it into this one to bring down to Alabama. And you'll see, as I sort of flip through the pages here, like here's notes on like specific plays that a quarterback was doing in college. So this is, who is this? Oh yeah, Luke Falk, who by the way I don't think plays in the NFL anymore. This is his game against Stanford in 2017, where I'm asking like, what's this route concept? He throws a YOLO back shoulder ball, which is underthrown. It's a cover 3 look. He's late hearing it. I'll sort of censor myself here. He's late hearing it, we'll say messes everything up.
Nice.
But like I would have notes like this on every play for all of these quarterbacks coming out of college to get ready for the NFL draft. And so that way this year, for example, 2018, I did a podcast with a good friend of mine, Nate Geary, on WGR, a radio station in Buffalo called Intentional Scouting, because Buffalo had one of the top 7 or 8 picks in the draft that year and they needed a quarterback. So this radio station, since they had me on as a guest, they were like, you and Nate can do a podcast just talking about all these quarterbacks. And so that way we would talk about Josh Allen and we'd be able to like just literally walk through play by play by play.
Yeah,
and I would have it all committed to memory. And so I found over the years that like writing this stuff down, pen and paper, it's old school. Yeah, it takes longer. Yes, you watch a quarterback for 2 hours and study all their plays and write it all down, every little thing. Your hand hurts by the end of it, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
It's not fun, but it commits it to memory. And so when I started doing the F1 stuff, particularly going to races, I would put it all down here. Like when I interview Oliver Oakes in Austin in 2025. 25. I got all the questions in here, written down. That way, like I'm in the hotel room the night before, I'm reading through it. I've got them committed to memory so that I don't have to look at it eventually. But I've got that in my brain so I can do it. President Mohammed bin Salman, like same thing. Wrote them all down out by hand. And where it also helps is, particularly on the Zoom interviews, like when I'm using my phone to record something, which we can get into in a second, because I always use my phone, and I'll walk you all through that in a minute. But I use my phone, voice memo, to record everything.
Yep,
I can then jot down in here, like if they say something interesting, I jot it down in here. So then that gets committed to my memory. So when I start writing the eventual story, I know, Gabby said something cool about this, or Fernando said something cool about this, or Lance Stroll made fun of me, but whatever, it's Lance Stroll. I got to write this down anyway, which legitimately happened in Miami last year face-to-face, which was super fun. I've got it all committed to memory. So pen and paper, it's old school, but it commits everything to my brain. And like I said, I found that when I was doing like a lot of TV, radio stuff, particularly the days leading up to a draft, when I'm on radio shows, TV shows, like 5-6 times a day, it helped me so much. And so, I start everything, man, my friend, pen and paper style.
Nice. No, I really appreciate that. I went through, so like at the beginning of this year, and honestly, like latter half of last year, I went through this whole thing where I was like, I had this entire digital system of like getting things done, just like my task to-do list. And I had like homegrown it using like my phone, like reminders and everything. And there's this whole system. And I finally was getting to a point with like doing like home projects and podcast stuff that I was like, I think I need a better system. like just to manage everything. So I went on this like really deep dive of like, I'm using Notion, I'm using, different apps to help me do this stuff. And I got to a point where I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, I'm spending more time managing the system than I am actually doing the thing that I need to do. So I literally, same thing. I bought a little like 2026 planner. It's got a couple of lines per day. And I literally just like, if I have to something at work pops up that my boss is like, hey, can you do this? I lean over and I write it down real fast. And my biggest thing was always that like capturing method, which is like, if I never wrote something down, then it wasn't getting done. That's just like my biggest crux. So my phone was solving that issue, but now with this, it's just like, write it down on the line, and then it's like, okay, it's done. Cool, check it off. That's it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the pen and paper. I really do get it.
The pen and paper thing. It's also, look, I was a lawyer for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'll age myself a little bit. Like, I started practicing law in like 2004. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of pre-smartphone, a lot of this digital stuff. So yeah, the first thing you would do at the start of every year is buy your daily planner, like big old school calendar, and you would have everything written down. Now, as I started moving through the practice of law, and software kept coming out, whether it's Clio or some of the other law firm management, case management software systems that are out there, like that, you had that ability. But I always found that you're relying on yourself to input that stuff, or relying on somebody else in the firm to input the stuff. And whether it's a partner that does things differently, or a paralegal, or legal assistant, or secretary, like, there's too many moving parts, particularly at the last place I was at, where it's like an East Coast firm with offices from, DC to Boston. Right. You're relying on everybody else to do it the same way as you, whereas you can just jot it down somewhere, and you've got all the dates for a case. You've got all the depo dates or trial dates or whatever you need. Yeah. And you can have that with you, because that was the other thing, right? It was in the heyday of people bringing phones into courthouses. Some courthouses didn't let you. Right. Like, you can't bring your phones in. You got to leave it in the car. Do that. So if a judge is asking you on the spot, like, hey, we're going to set this in for a 3-day trial started in August of, 2012. What dates do you have? Yeah. Sorry, Your Honor, I don't know. My phone's on my calendar's on my phone. It's in the car. No, that doesn't fly. So I had to have it in pen and paper.
I really appreciate it. So you are a writer for SB Nation. Like you said, you're covering F1 stuff, covered some football stuff. SB Nation is an online website. So how does that translation between what you have on pen and paper to then either WordPress or directly into SB Nation, or like Google Docs, like you mentioned, how does that process go? And have you ever lost things? Has there ever been like that moment where you're like, crap, I wrote this down on paper and now it went through the washer of my, because it was in the back pocket of my pants. Right. Like, has that ever happened? What does that process look like? The transfer from physical handwritten notes to then the digital side of it? Yeah,
it depends a lot on the kind of content and really the sport, to be frank. Because, for example, we just got through an NFL draft, right? Right. Now, I did a lot of film breakdowns, Fernando Mendoza, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain. And so for those types of stories, it's how do I transfer a play that I've broken down in pen and paper into a WordPress document that eventually becomes a story? And it goes through a couple different steps. WordPress is our current publishing platform at Vox, at SB Nation. We used to have our own sort of proprietary platform called Chorus, but we moved away from that because of some things we're trying at SB Nation and at Vox.com, big picture-wise. So now we use WordPress, which is a pretty common publishing software. Yeah, I'm sure anybody that's done anything on the net knows what WordPress is. So it's literally just pulling up a window, pulling up a blank WordPress document, and starting to type, starting to like tell the story, get the story down. Yeah. But the tricky part is I've always relied on not just saying, hey, this great play that Fernando Mendoza made against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game and describing it. I want to show it to you too. I want you to see that video clip. And so what will happen is I'll be writing the story, I'll describe the play, taking it from the book, the notes, to WordPress, typing it in there, and then I'll cut the film itself. I've got a platform that I use, which is kind of secretive, so I can't really dive into that too much.
Yep.
But it's a film platform for both NFL and college football, where I can literally pull up, show me every Fernando Mendoza throw in road games in the fourth quarter on 3rd and 10 and longer, where the throw is 10 or more yards in the air. Like, that's how focused
cool.
I can do it, and it will pull these plays up within minutes. And so it's a huge time saver for me. I wish I could talk more about it, but I really can't. But I can then clip each individual play. So I can clip that play, save it, and then my current means of doing this is I post it on Blue Sky, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Blue Sky,
I will then post that play on Blue Sky. I used to do it in Threads, but we tried it both ways, Blue Sky and Threads. We found that when we did it on Threads, since Threads kind of punishes links, external links, all that stuff, the page views weren't the same. And so if you now read a story of mine, if you go back to any of the stuff I did before this previous draft, whether it's from Mendoza, Ruben Bain, Vega Ione, whoever I wrote about with these film stories, you'll see walls of text, description of a play, Blue Sky link to me just being like, hey, here's a fun clip of Mendoza. And I'll just drop it in. So you've got my description of the play, talking about why it matters, and then the Blue Sky link video, write the article. We do our stuff internally that we do via Slack, which I know we're going to talk about, because Slack is a huge part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to touch on that in a second. Article gets posted. So that's kind of on the football side.
Right.
Was where I think the rubber really sort of hits the road is on the F1 side, particularly when I'm at a race, because that's really frenetic, chaotic. Yeah. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read Elizabeth Blackstock. She wrote recently about, she just went to Miami but didn't have media credentials. It was the first time she went to the Miami race without them for a while, and talked about what it's like in that media scrum. And I've been in those with her at different races. And it's chaotic. And what is happening, when you're in the hospitality space, it's a little quieter, like on Thursday media day. Fun little tidbit. If you watched this past season of Drive to Survive, my wife and I have only made it through the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
If you watch episode 2, it's the one that's focused on Alpine and Sauber at Miami. If you look at the moments where they show Gabby in his hospitality session on Thursday, you see my arm, because I'm sitting right next to him. You see my left arm, my sleeve, my Apple
I'm going to have
Watch.
to go back and rewatch this now.
And I wasn't even sure. And then my wife and I were like, wait a second. And we pulled up that Aston Martin TikTok. And sure enough, it's the same shirt. It's
same
me,
shirt.
I was sitting next to him. So
look at you, just making
I've got
appearances
this
everywhere.
in front of me, and I can literally pull through and find, I've got it highlighted here. This is Gabby's media session.
That's
from that Thursday. So I'm jotting down the cool stuff. Like he talks about, I don't want to talk about the positions. We're just focused on a clean quality this week.
Yeah.
While I'm recording it with my phone. Okay.
So
I've got voice memo open. I'm recording it with my phone. And what happens, Owen, once he gets done, I DM the file of the recording to myself in Slack, and it automatically generates a transcript for me.
So, okay, yeah. See, this is the stuff that I love. So,
So what's really nice is in a weekend like that, where you're going from hospitality space to hospitality space and hearing from different drivers, and sometimes you're in a media scrum and you can't really jot things down, like particularly post-quali or post-race.
Yeah.
I will get back to my seat in the media center, and I will have a pretty good transcript of every driver's session.
That's nice.
Then that makes writing the eventual article so much easier. Because I've talked to other people, I've seen other people like trying to listen and transcribe. This cuts that down to like 1/10 of the time it would typically take. Now, look, you got to go through and you got to clean it up, but it makes it so much easier for me. And, I've been able to, by the time I get back to my seat, like say the Gabby one, because I do remember I wrote about that. I get back to my seat at the media center. I've got the transcript waiting for me. 15 minutes later, the story is in WordPress, and 20 minutes later, the headline is on it through Slack, and we've published it.
That's incredible.
That cuts down an incredible amount of time. And I do this also, when I interviewed, Graham Loudon from Cadillac before Miami, it was just him and I. His transcript was super clean. I was able to get that story up and ready within like 40 minutes after talking to him. Fernando Mendoza, I interviewed him before the draft.
Right.
Again, it was super clean in Slack. It's gotten, when I started doing this, using Slack to DM myself and generating transcripts, it was a little rougher, like say 2 years ago. They've improved it tremendously. Like they're starting to take out the ums, the likes, some of the pauses and stuff.
This is I'm sorry to cut you off. This is a Slack first party tool, like feature that it's like when you email this yourself or DM yourself, it just does it for you automatically.
Yeah, you'll DM yourself the file, and it'll have a little, like, it's in blue and it says generate transcript. You click that link, takes it 30 seconds or so to generate the transcript, and then boom, right there in that DM to yourself is a rough transcript. And what's even better is if you're viewing it, on your laptop, it's got timestamps.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
So you can, in the audio file, go right to that timestamp. If you're like, wait, what did he say here? What did she say here? Click on that timestamp. It plays the audio file right there.
That's awesome.
Now, voice memo has something similar as well. You can also generate a transcript and do the same thing. But I've just found it's cleaner, it's easier, it's faster on Slack. And since we do at Vox Media everything in Slack, since we're fully remote, so we'll have meetings on Slack. We have a channel where we debate and discuss and workshop potential headlines for all of our stories. That's in Slack. And so I could send people these clips and say, like, hey, like the Mendoza story, send it to our social media people and be like, look, what parts of this do you think would make for good content online? What parts of this do you think we should highlight, and things like that? And so, like Slack has been a huge part of what we do. It is a huge part of what we do.
So Slack to me is just a like a DM IM service, right? Like it's a chat service for teams that use it. But I have a buddy who works at DraftKings, and he now uses Slack. And I was talking to him about it the one day, and I want to know if you can confirm this, because I was messaging him like, what is it? What's so good about it and everything? And he said to me, he goes, it feels like right now, like I'm barely scratching the surface of like what it can do. And he goes, and it feels like it's going to be one of those things that's like, once I get a true understanding of what it is and what it can do, it's like everything's going to flow through there. So it's like the fact that like, is that true? Like, is it one of those apps that it's like, once you crack the code on it, you're like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like, 100%. This is just
because, and I will say this, like, when I first started on the whole journalism path here, it was at this place called Inside the Pylon. It was a place that, we started. Me and a couple of other people started it.
Yeah.
And we pulled in some IT people that we knew that were like, help us manage all of this.
Yeah.
And this was, again, 2014. And one of the first people we brought in sort of the IT side was like, you have to use Slack. And it was before Slack became what it is today, which is, like you said, so many companies rely on it, so many organizations rely on it. So I've been using Slack for 12 years now at this point.
Right.
And what I love about it is the features beyond just these transcripts that I generate, the ability to sort of have different rooms, have different Slack channels dedicated to different aspects of what we do on a daily basis at Vox, at SB Nation, is huge, right? Like I said, we've got one dedicated to headlines. We've got one dedicated to social content we want to get out. We've got different channels set up for different sports. So like we've got an NFL one, an NBA one, a women's sports one. We've also got them for non-work reasons, right? Like we've got one for all the people that are in the DC office or DC area. Like, we've got them, sales has them for the stuff that they have to do. We've got them for cat owners, dog owners, parents. Like, and the way it sort of works at Vox is it gives you that feel of being in an office when all of us are, nationwide, worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not all in the same office space. You know, we
Right.
do have office space in DC and New York City, but you know, we're not all there, but it makes us feel like we're there. Like, you know, I've used it, you know, to get recommendations on pet stuff, to get recommendations on doctors. Like,
Right.
you know, you know, in the sort of the DC area Slack channel, like, hey, does anybody have a good like orthopedic surgeon they go to, or does anybody have a good vet recommendation? Anybody have a good restaurant? I got friends coming in from town. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've made connections and friends from the non-SB Nation parts of the company through Slack that were it not for that, I wouldn't know they even existed.
That's crazy.
That part of it is huge. The DM part, the like private messaging part, the group chat part, like that part of it is huge as well. You can integrate it with your calendar. And so, you know, that's what I do. And so if I'm in a meeting or I'm in an interview or I'm, you know, at my son's high school baseball games, like
Right.
there's a little icon, like it will take it from my calendar to the icon. And so if somebody thinks, oh, wait, I needed to ask Mark about this, they'll go to send me a DM, but that icon will pop up. They hover the cursor over, it'll say offsite at baseball game or in meeting with Fernando Mendoza. So they know, oh, I can still send them this, but I'm not going to get a response right away.
Right. I'm not going to hear back. Yeah.
It helps if you use it right, if you sync it with your calendar, if you do all of those things, it really helps frame everybody's expectations of you, right? Otherwise, like somebody might send me a DM, and since I'm one of those people that 9 times out of 10, this is glued to my hand, my phone.
Yeah.
They might expect a response right away, and if they don't get it, they might wonder what's going on.
Yeah,
but
like
since I've got my calendar set up, it's like, oh, he's at Disney World, or you know, he's at the beach with his family, or you know, he's at a doctor's appointment, or whatever it is. People know, and it helps reframe their expectations when they should hear back from me. And so,
absolutely,
Slack, we do 99.9% of the stuff we do at Vox through Slack, and it's a huge lifesaver for me. It's a huge lifesaver for all of us.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So jumping back into like the transcription stuff a little bit, do you find now that like when in an interview, and you mentioned like it includes like the timestamps and everything, so you can go back and listen to the actual audio clip. Do you find now in interviews that you can pay attention like even more than you already do because you know that that's in the background going, and you're like, even if you don't catch it in an interview, you know, like, all right, I know later I'm going to be able to find this moment and go to it immediately in the audio recording that I have, you know, and it's like not even a concern in your mind that you potentially lost the moment.
Yeah. The only concern I have is it still recorded? Like that's literally what I'm sitting, like, particularly when I'm doing these over Zoom. Like I would tell you when I was interviewing Graham Loudon the other day, like we had 20 minutes together. He was fantastic. The only thing I found myself doing was making sure like when my phone would go dark, it's still recorded, right?
Still
like that's the fear in the back of my, even though I know it is, it's this weird sort of almost OCD thing that I've got, but I know that it's all there, but I will still jot down, like if they say something like, you know, he told this great joke about, you know, there's this old story that, you know, if I had a dog, he wouldn't recognize me because I've aged so much since the time we joined the grid because we've been working so hard. I thought it was a great story. I had to write that down and make sure, even though I knew it was there, I like jotted that down because it was such a great line. I want to use it in my own sort of everyday lexicon now. But yeah, I don't, Owen, have to worry so much about missing something. And what's good about that is, you know, you mentioned that round table and getting nervous. I still get very nervous before these things, particularly over Zoom. Not the way it was. Like I remember the first one I had of these was Lando. That was my first one-on-one exclusive. Right. And this was early 23 when they were struggling out of the gate. It was before Azerbaijan. And
the dark ages.
Yeah. And it was 1 p.m. on like a Tuesday. And I was literally pacing for like 40 minutes in the bedroom next to the office upstairs where I was going to do it. Because I was like, oh my God, this is like terrifying. Like I'm going to screw this up. He's going to laugh at me. He's going to think I'm an idiot. And I was like, literally as I was pacing, like I had the script written down and I was like working through, making sure that I knew every question, when it was supposed to happen. So I wouldn't have to look at my notes and all of that stuff. And then the Zoom pops up and there's Lando and he's happy and he's smiling, even though they're struggling. And these guys, with the exception of one that I'll get to, are so great. They're so fun to talk to. They're so personable. They put you at ease within seconds. But I was so nervous before that one. When I interviewed Zach Brown, it was the same thing. I was like so nervous. But now that the like nerves have diminished, and I know I've got the recording going, so I don't have to worry so much about looking at notes and thinking about notes and jotting stuff down. I've found I've been able to sort of follow up better, right?
Right.
Like, I'm not so nervous and focused on getting all the questions out. I can listen to an answer, not have to worry about jotting it down, not have to worry about taking it down or whatever. I'm not rushing to get to the next question on the script. If they say something interesting, I can actually now follow up on it, which I think is huge.
Right.
So that part has certainly helped. You know, like I said, Lance Stroll making fun of me to my face. That is what it is, right?
It is, yeah.
Well, it was. I'll just tell this quick anecdote. Like, it was a Thursday at Media Day in Miami last year, 25, and I had just left Carlos Sainz's session. He was talking about how that track is great for F1 sprint races.
Yeah.
You know, he loves doing F1 sprint in Miami because it's such a good track for it, and you can, you know, get on it pretty quickly, and it flows well, and there's good racing, even in a sprint format. And so I went from that to Aston Martin's hospitality, and maybe this is a reflection on who Lance Stroll is. There was just like me and like two other BD people there. And I asked him, I'm like, you know, Carlos just said this is a great place for sprint races. Do you agree? Do you think this is a good track for it, a good place for it? He's like, no, I don't. Doesn't matter to me. Why? What are you talking about? Why are you asking me that question?
Okay.
I told you, because Carlos just said it was great. Like, what are we doing here, Lance? But
yeah, what is going on here?
There is a moment in every media scrum where the veteran media people, the younger ones like me, we set an over-under on what Lance's session will be, how long it will last. And it's usually funny. Somewhere around 25, 30 seconds. I think he's hit the over once since I've been there.
Oh, so he just does not like interviewing. He does not like media stuff.
No.
All right. I
like I was saying, most of these drivers, they love it.
Yeah.
You know, maybe some like it more than others. Like, some like it more than others, depending on where they're at, right?
Yeah.
Like, Max never enjoys it.
Yeah.
But Lance doesn't like it. And you know, that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like us. But yeah, I mean, the whole, you know, the recording it, the Slack part, that's great. Yeah, the whole media setup at a race is wild. I don't know if you want me to dive into that, but that is wild.
When so you mentioned, you know, voice memos and everything, and when you're interviewing or in a media scrum like that with like you mentioned Carlos, you know, it's you and like 20 other reporters is what I'm at least picturing in my head. Let me know if I'm like way off base.
Yeah.
But it's you, 20 other reporters. I'm assuming also like a good distance away from Carlos. You know, he's on a stage or like on a chair and you're, you know, maybe 10, 15 feet away from him. How does the voice memos then work with that? Are you able to like, is there a table in front of Carlos that you can go and put your phone on and then like everybody else's phone is right there too? And then you go and sit down? Okay.
Yeah. It really sort of, the setup differs from team to team. But like with that Carlos one, for example, he's at a table. Now I was standing right next to him, like literally right next to him. But they've got a table. We all put our phones or digital recorders in front of them. What's tricky though is the media scrums post-competitive session, right?
Okay.
And this is going to really get into the weeds here, but whatever. We're having fun today. There is a huge line of demarcation between, you know, the credential and process to begin with. But journalist credentials, there are two different ranks.
Okay.
There's
I didn't know this.
Broadcast media, right?
Right.
And then there's the written media, the print media. That's where I fall, even though I write for digital media. Like, I'm written media, okay? The journalists that have credentials through a network that has television broadcast rights, Sky, BBC, ESPN, Fox, whatever, they are at a higher level than us, okay?
Okay.
So the media pen at, say, Austin or Miami, there's, even though it's like a big area, there's two distinct sections. There's the TV broadcast section and then the written media section, okay? And so after every competitive session, every driver has to do the TV interviews, and there will be, it's like a U, right? There's this little like fence. It's a U. On the outside of the U, there's like 12 or 15, however many networks are there, camera stands, okay? One for each network. Every driver, last year it was 20, now obviously 22, has to talk to every single network, okay?
Yeah.
They have to talk to all of them. Now that sets up a fun little dynamic at the end of a race where they're all sort of coming in at the same time. And if you watch like Drive to Survive, you'll see them sometimes waiting and watching to go to the next one.
Right, just like hanging out.
Weird little dance. Once they're finished, the top 3, first, second, third, the podium finishers, they go to the press conference, which is for written media, okay?
Right.
The other 17, or now the other 19, they go to the written media pen where I am, where there are 3 mic stands.
Yeah.
But they only have to stop at 1.
Oh,
so that sets up a tricky dynamic where you can't be at all 3, right?
But you had...
But you're trying to get them. And so what typically happens is you make friends. And so I would be, working with other journalists. We'd sit one at one, the second at the middle one, and then the other at the third. And we'd like share the transcript, share the recordings. So we would all get them. But that way you're not trying to get to all 3. Now, fun story. So Austin in 24, right? If you remember that race, Lewis, last season with Mercedes, he spins out on like lap 2 in the gravel out of the race.
Yeah.
I'm in the media center and I'm looking around when this happens because I'm like, Lewis is going to talk to the media now, right?
Yeah, he's got to come.
I'm expecting everybody to get up. Nobody does. So I walk over to the print area and there's, like I said, 3 mic stands. And there's one that's the closest to the end of that U where the broadcast journalists are, right? So typically that's where the drivers stop. They'll just stop at that one.
Right.
So I'm sitting there waiting, watching the race. They've got TVs. I'm taking notes in here.
Yeah, you're doing your note. Yeah.
Doing my note taking. Still no Lewis. Still no other journalists. Eventually, Elizabeth Blackstock comes over. She's like, Lewis is going to come here, right? I'm like, yeah, but nobody else is here.
Right. Nobody else.
So we're sitting there and we're thinking, all right, eventually people are going to swarm. We won't get to ask Lewis a single question, but we'll be right in front. Then Lewis comes. He goes to the other side of the U. He's working his way towards us. Still just Elizabeth and I. Still just Elizabeth and I. He gets to the final TV station. Still just Elizabeth and I. Now we're like, oh, my God. Is this about to happen?
This is going to happen. Yeah.
Sure enough, Lewis comes over, looks right at us, and is like, all right, what do you guys got for me? For 5 minutes, it was just the 3 of us.
That's awesome.
It was the coolest thing ever. It was like legitimately the coolest thing ever. Like I've asked Lewis questions before and stuff like that. But yeah, that was super cool. But that's how it works in these media sessions, in these media scrums. Like after races though, you've got, and I can show you photos or whatever, these 3 mic stands, they only have to stop at 1, but they want to get out of there at this point.
They want to,
And so they'll go to the first available one. So if you're not able to get your microphone in front of them, you better make friends with somebody that can, and that's what we would do. Now, in the hospitality spaces, it is, they'll put up a table in front. It seems like Mercedes, Ferrari, they've got these sound systems. They'll have these big speakers, and a lot of people just put their phones on a speaker.
Nice.
So when I was in Fred's post-Miami one in 25, when there was all the talk about like the radio messages with Lewis and how angry he was, my phone was on a speaker, recorded it, and Leo was having his pizza dinner on a couch like 10 feet away from me. Like, I mean, how cool is that?
That's
like,
incredible.
Half the scrum is listening to what Fred has to say. The rest of us are just watching Leo because he's just like bouncing around on the couch and he's looking super happy. And it's like, honestly,
you know who the important celebrities are. I mean,
I always wanted to just get up from my chair and like play with Leo, but it probably would have been a little bit rude. But yeah, they've usually got a spot like set up in the like media session hospitality parts. It's when you're in that media scrum where you've got your phone and you're trying to, and your shoulder hurts because you're trying to get in front of them. But for the most part, those of us on the sort of written print side, you make friends. You have one person at each of those 3 stands. You record it, you share it, and you work together on it. Now, look, some people are nicer about it than others. But like I said, Elizabeth Blackstock and I, like we had a little system going, and we would divide up post-race hospitality things. Like she'd go to a couple of team principals, I'd go to others. We'd share that stuff because at the end of the day, like the transcript and what is said isn't going to make your story. It's what you write. that's going to make it.
That's
and
it.
so she would write one thing we'd write about the same Toto Wolff media scrum. We'd have different angles on it. We'd have our different stories.
Yeah, two different stories.
And that's great. But that's generally kind of how it works. It can be hard. It can be intimidating. When you're in a huge scrum of people in front of a driver and they look at you and you're like, what was it like out there today?
Yeah.
But if I've got the notes down, like, I could tell you, like, flipping through races, like, I've got quotes like, Leclerc, I am overheating.
Yeah.
And so if I get a chance to ask Leclerc a question, it's like, boom, you were overheating here. You said you were overheating on lap 23. What happened? What were you feeling?
What happened?
In the car?
Yep.
I've got, I was able to ask Toto questions after Austin in 25 about tire management, because I remember when that race started, you probably remember this too. Nobody thought the softs were going to last, and Leclerc had a huge dent on the soft. So I was asking him about that because of the notes that I had in the media scrum area. And so, I know that was a really long-winded sort of answer there, but there are tables, but sometimes you got to either make friends or have long arms.
Yeah. That reminds me when we went to St. Petersburg and we had media credentials for the IndyCar opener, and we were in like the similar media pen, and the intimidation is definitely there because like there's all the broadcast TV crews, they're all coming in, but then like I remember like Nolan Siegel coming in. He goes over to the broadcast crews, and then like he comes over, and I don't know how I ended up like right in the front there. We were with like a bunch of other people and creators and whatnot. Somehow I ended up being the first person to talk to him, and he just came over and he's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I gotta ask you questions and do stuff with you." Right. So I understand the intimidation angle. And but that's a very cool story with Lewis too.
What's weird is, and I haven't done it on the IndyCar side yet. I say yet because we got a race coming here to DC in August. Yeah. So hopefully going to get down there for that. But on the F1 side, there is a lot of intimidation from the other journalists, in a sense.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because you've got people that have been in these things that go to every race, that have been going to every race for decades.
Right.
And they're lifers, and they command a certain presence in those media pens. And, you're in a session with them, they dominate it. They have the ability to do that. Now, there are also some that are in that sort of same level, like Luke Smith at The Athletic. One of the nicest human beings on the planet. Like, we'll share stuff with you. We'll bounce ideas off of you. We'll like listen to your questions. Like, super nice guy. But there is that sort of like peer-to-peer sort of intimidation. Elizabeth actually wrote about this in her recent story about Miami and what it's like being in a pen. And, it can be scary at times. It can be intimidating at times. But that's why, sort of getting back to, taking this full circle, having done my prep work here, it committed it to my brain. Like I'm ready in those moments. Hopefully the questions I ask aren't, inducing eye rolls from those more veteran journalists, or I'm not always getting made fun of like Lance.
Right.
But for the most part, it's worked for me.
Yeah. Very nice. No, it's definitely the flow you have is it definitely works for you. Your articles are always amazing. They're always like an instant read. If I see them online, I'm like that. I'm immediately just like, I need to read this right now. So you would mention jumping kind of from like your pre and then like publish stuff to then like post publishing things. So you mentioned that there's an app called Flourish that you use.
Yeah.
And I did. So I don't like to look up things beforehand, but I do just do like a tiny little deep dive because I want to understand like what the app is. If I found the right Flourish, it's a data analytics app. Is it? Okay. So I found the right one. So how do you use that? Tell us what you do with it. What is the idea or the goal there? Like what using that app?
I use it on the desktop, Flourish.studio, and it's a graphic data viz app, basically data viz platform. And what I've done with it is to try to help readers to visualize competition is the best way to put it. Where I really used it a lot was tail end of last season when Oscar versus Lando became Oscar versus Lando versus Max down the right. And you, through Flourish, can make interactive and, data viz. You can make data viz come to life. And so what was really cool was to set up and use in articles the point totals for those 3 drivers over a certain period of time, right?
Yeah.
So say Austria to the Vegas or whatever. And, they could click on it and it would start running. And you could see like Oscar at the top and Lando and then Max way down. And their point totals sort of come closer together to really sort of capture how that 2-way race had become a 3-way fight down the stretch of last year.
Yes. Yeah.
And because we have found, look, we live in an era where, yes, what I do, written media for the most part, you could say it's a dying breed or whatever. People like visuals. People like, vertical video. People like, graphics. People like charts. People like stuff that they can just look at.
Yep.
And so taking that race, it's one thing to write 1,000 words on how this was Oscar's season. Lando kind of crashed the party. But now since Austin or since whenever, Max has now turned this into a 3-way fight. And now Max truly believes. Like when we were in Texas on Thursday last year, Max was like, I'm not even talking about the title. Like whatever.
Yeah.
And Sunday night, that man firmly believed he was going to win the Drivers' Championship. Like the transformation in Max himself was a huge story last year. And I wrote about it a ton. But it's one thing to write about it a ton. It's one thing to write 10,000 words over a month and a half about it. It's another thing to say, here's what that looks like. Here's Max hundreds of points off the pace. Here's Max now. Within one race, he can take over the lead. And so Flourish, I've only sort of scratched the surface with it. But I've done it for like, point totals. I've done it for like races, like here's how somebody closed the gap over the course of a race, things like that. And it's super easy. It's literally just input the data. You can do it Google Sheet, Excel, whatever.
Yeah.
Plop it in, play around with colors and things like that. And within seconds, you've got like a visual,
an
quick little video, interactive thing that readers can use, that people can use to sort of say, oh, yeah, you used 10,000 words to tell me that Max is coming close. Now I can just like see what that looks like.
See what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Cause I'm picturing the example you just gave with like Max, like, making that late charge. And I'm picturing literally the line graph where it's like, all of a sudden you see like the head, like it's a picture of Max as like the data point. And then all of a sudden it just shoots right up. And you're like, oh, I've had so many moments where it's like, I see visuals like that. And I'm like, oh, holy shit. Like that is like, it's incredible. The catch up that he's had, or like I've seen the ones where it's like, TV show like dominance and viewership and everything, and it's like all of a sudden here comes this like random one-off show that's like just flying off the charts. So yeah, I am a visual person, so that having that interactive data that tells that story too, and you kill it with using it as like, it's not telling your story. Like your article is telling a story, but like you're just like, here's this visual enhancement for you. So it like helps the article hit even more.
The sort of theme of this entire episode is like, how do you commit stuff to memory, right? How do you almost learn something, right? And as I said, like I could beat you over the head with quotes, with anecdotes, with whatever about, Max making a late season charge, or McLaren turned it around in 24. Or, I could tell you, what Zach Brown told me about that. Or I could show you, here's where McLaren was at the start of the year with Lando and Oscar, literally the 2 slowest cars in Bahrain. Here's where they were at the end of the year. Here's what the lap times look like. Here's what the points look like. And there are websites like F1 Standings. It's one of the bookmarks I have. Like I have a whole bookmark tab of F1 resources. F1 Tempo for data and telemetry stuff, and F1 Standards is a good one, but that's a static graphic of these lines. It's one thing to see it statically. Yeah, that's good. But I feel like, Owen, it's much more impactful when you literally see it over time rise. Yeah. And that's when it really clicks in your brain. And so, I'm trying to get people to like learn when they read something. Yeah. And if you see that visual, you walk away thinking, oh yeah, that's when it turned around. That's how big the charge is. That's how big the turnaround is. And, when you watch your next race with your buddies, or an IMAX movie with Owen and Casey, like you can do, you'll have that anecdote ready to go.
Right. In your head. Yeah. It's very cool. And you're exactly right. There is a difference between the, the static graph that you're looking at of just like, oh, I see how they're they're rising in the standings and everything, and that's great and everything. But yeah, that visual of like, here's them actually like shooting up all of a sudden, like you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I get that. That makes a lot of sense. Well, yeah, I mean, I was so happy when you answered me and you said like, I'm all pen and paper, because it was such a juxtaposition to how everybody just, it's all technology and everything. So I was very excited for this episode. I thank you so much for coming on and being here with me.
Of course, buddy.
I will include, for all listeners, I will include links to Mark's articles and all the tools and everything that we talked about in this episode in the details, so make sure to go check that out below. Mark, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you. Hopefully, what are you going to any races soon? What's anything on the calendar that you can tell us?
Yeah, IndyCar DC, since that's right down the street. I've actually been talking with some teams and with IndyCar, and hopefully going to get to do some stuff there. The plan is Austin again. I didn't do Miami because my daughter had a dance competition that weekend, and she was doing her first duet. So I didn't want to miss that. So the plan is Austin, and I might have to break the seal and go to Vegas. I haven't done Vegas yet. Yeah. It's confession time from Uncle Mark. I've never been to Las Vegas. Okay, I have never been. Mostly because I don't want to be in a casino, because I'm one of those people that like. I was talking with my wife recently. We had a trip, back when we were both lawyers, through a law firm to Atlantic City, and we walked into a casino. I think it was a Tropicana. And I sat down at the 3-card table, and within 5 minutes, I had won a pretty good amount of money. Yeah. To the point where the pit boss came over, took my ID, like signed me up for all these rewards.
Whoa.
But before she even came back with my ID, I had lost it all and walked away from the table, and I forgot that she had my ID. So I had to later that night, I was trying to buy a drink, and I'm like, wait a second, I had to go back and do the walk of shame to get my ID. Yeah. Meanwhile, I hadn't even had a drink. I was just walking around because I'd stopped myself from playing. I don't want to go to Vegas. I've always said I'm not going to go to Vegas, but having missed Miami, I might have to get to Vegas this year. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see.
I don't blame you. I mean, that was when Casey went last year to Vegas. She came back. She was like, I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. She got some insane opportunities there. She was able to get in paddock passes and everything. So she lived the dream, but she was it was a lot of fun, and she was I was very pleasantly surprised by that. So, but I like that you're doing the IndyCar stuff with these. It makes so much sense for you too. Like you said, it's literally right down the road. So it's just it's one of those things where it's why not?
I mean, and I've thought, and I've talked to teams about going to races, going to IndyCar stuff, because I do some, IndyCar coverage. And I thought about Mid-Ohio the other year. I thought about Indy one year. But since it's literally down the street,
it's too good of an opportunity.
If they're coming to my house, I might as well let them in,
Right. Might as well. Yeah. But no, I really like that. But again, thank you. Thank you for being here. It is always a blast talking to you. It is so much fun. I truly appreciate it. I hope everybody listening had a blast listening to this interview. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got tons of stuff planned. Like I said, we're going to Canada, so we're going to be doing some vlogs, stuff like that. So tune into that. Mark, thank you again. And we'll see you later. And hopefully Austin and IndyCar, all good weekends for you.
Here's hoping.
Here's hoping. Thank you.